my name's Amanda and welcome to the 9th block tutorial in my Star Sampler Quilt Along with Me series. In today's video I'm going to be showing you how to make this lovely Missouri star block. Now I have personally never made one of these before and I was quite pleasantly surprised at just how easy and simple it is to piece together. Once you get the hang of making these half quarter square triangle units just here, I promise that you will find the block very easy to piece together, and before you know it you'll have a beautiful Missouri star block just like this. Now as always, you will find all of the measurement and cutting instructions for this block down in the description box below, and also there is of course a pattern sheet that goes with this block for you to click on and print out and follow along with. And so with that, let's get into how we make the Missouri star block. The fabrics I'm using to make this block include the Kerchief solid for the background, XOXO basics in Thistle for my first print fabric, and then Print Shop Point in charcoal for my second print fabric. To make the Missouri star, you will need to cut 4 4-inch squares and 4 3.5-inch squares from your background fabric, 1 4 3/4 square and 2 4.5-inch squares from your first print, and then 2 4.5-inch squares and 2 4-inch squares from your second print fabric. Next, place the 3.5-inch background squares, all of the 4.5-inch squares, and the 4 4-inch background squares to one side. With the leftover pieces, place one 4-inch second print fabric square evenly on top of the other. Then with a ruler and blade, cut them diagonally in half, resulting in 4 triangle pieces. Next, grab the center square and fold it neatly in half once, and then in half again, gently pressing down along the folded edges. Open the square back out and grab a second print triangle. Fold it evenly in half, and then using the folded lines as a guide, line up the top edge of the triangle with one edge of the square until the two pieces center perfectly together. Pin the two pieces together along the top edge and then sew a 1/4-inch seam down it. Press the seam gently outwards with a medium to hot steamy iron. Evenly fold over another background fabric triangle, lining up the folded lines on each piece again. Pin the top edge into place and then sew a 1/4-inch seam along it. Press the triangle piece outwards and then with a ruler and blade, quickly trim off the bunny ears from either side, eliminating any excess bulk from the unit. Next, continue on with the same set of steps to complete the center unit of the block. Once finished, square up the unit with a set square ruler so that it measures a perfect 6.5-inch square. Next, grab the 4.5-inch squares and mark a diagonal line on the wrong side of 2 of the lightest print squares. Pair each of these with the other 2 4.5-inch squares, pinning them evenly together. At the sewing machine, place your 1/4-inch foot along the left-hand side of the center line and sew a 1/4-inch seam along it. Feed the next pair of squares through in the same way. Then once you've reached the end, turn them around and sew another 1/4-inch seam along the other side of the line. Snip the joining threads and then cut each pair in half along the center line with a ruler and blade. Press the seams on all 4 half square triangle units towards the darker side of fabric. Then trim each unit down to a perfect 4-inch square. Next, to turn these half square triangles into half quarter square triangle units, first mark a line down the center of each of your 4-inch background fabric squares with a pencil and ruler. Then pair each of these with a half square triangle unit, ensuring that the pencil line is running in the opposite direction to the seam line on the half square triangle. After carefully pinning each one evenly into place, sew a 1/4 inch seam along the left hand side of the pencil line, feeding each pair through one at a time in the same way. Then, once reaching the end of the 4th pair, turn the chain squares around and sew another 1/4 inch seam down the other side of the center line. Snip each of the joining threads and then cut each unit in half with a ruler and blade, resulting in 8 half quarter square triangle units. Press the center seams in each unit towards the background print triangle, then square each one up to a perfect 3.5 inch half quarter square triangle unit. Once each unit has been trimmed, pair the half quarter square triangles together so that they mirror each other. Then, one pair at a time, turn one unit over onto the other, evenly matching up the center seams and then pinning together. Take the 4 pairs of units to the sewing machine and sew a 1/4 inch seam along each of the pinned edges. After snipping the joining threads, gently press each of the center seams open flat with the iron. Once all elements of the block have been pieced together, lay them out into the Missouri Star block design, using the pattern sheet as a guide if needed. Beginning with the middle row, flip one half quarter square triangle duo over onto the center unit. Evenly match up the 2 triangle points and then pin the edge into place. Then do the same thing with the opposite half quarter square triangle duo. At the sewing machine, sew a 1/4 inch seam along one side first and then turn it around and sew down the opposite side. Then gently press each of these seams inwards towards the center unit. Next, move on to piecing the top and bottom rows by turning over each of the corner background fabric squares onto the half quarter square triangle duos and pinning them evenly into place. Sew a 1/4 inch seam along each of the pinned edges, taking the pins out as you go. Then press each of the seams outwards towards the corner background squares. With all of the rows back into their right places, flip the top row over onto the middle one. Match up the 2 triangle points and then neatly nest and pin together the other seams along this edge. Carefully sew a 1/4 inch seam along this side, making sure each of the seams are lying flat before sewing over them. Then gently press the seam inwards towards the middle row of the block. Flip over the final row onto the middle one, matching up the triangle points and nesting the seams again before pinning into place. Sew one last 1/4 inch seam down this edge, paying attention to where your seams are lying before sewing over them. Press this seam inwards towards the middle of the block and then give the top of the block a good final press. Then, using a set square ruler, trim the block to a perfect 12.5 inch square. And so there we have Block 9 Missouri Star done and dusted. I do hope that you enjoy making this block. Try and use 2 contrasting prints when you're making it just to make the design really pop and look really cool. As always, I will try my very best to get Block 10 out as soon as possible. I am actually really excited to make the next block. There's a really cool kind of twist to this one that I am actually really excited to piece together and see how it works out. As always, keep on sharing your finished blocks with me. I absolutely love seeing them. Tag me on Instagram using the hashtag Amanda's Quilt Along, or send them to me on my Facebook page or by email, or however way that you like to share things. I'm sure I'll be able to find it. And so with that, friends, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you another time very, very soon. Bye!